Hey everyone! Tonight we're stepping back thousands of years to the banks of the Nile, home to the mighty pyramids, powerful pharaohs, and gods who, people believed, watched every heartbeat of human life. But beyond the glitter of golden masks and the towering temples, everyday existence was far from easy. So let's imagine this. What if you had to live just one ordinary day in ancient Egypt? Spoiler alert, it wasn't all incense and royal banquets. The sun alone could feel like it was personally out to test your limits. Before we get started, if you enjoy these time travel journeys, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, only if you truly love this kind of content. And drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always amazing to see our little history-loving community spread across the globe. The first light in ancient Egypt does not so much arrive as invade. It pours through the reed walls of your hut in spears of gold that feel strangely like heat made visible. A god's hand pressed against your eyelids, insisting that sleep is over and duty has begun. The roof of woven stalks sighs under the new weight of morning, and the straw mat beneath your shoulders remembers every uncomfortable hour you spent on it. Your linen sheet, a mere suggestion of comfort, slips from your skin like a surrendered banner. Outside, the day is already bright enough to make the horizon flicker, as if the desert is not land at all, but a mirage pretending to be solid. When you step out, the ground greets you like a kiln. Stones kept the memory of yesterday's noon and offer it back without apology. The air is dry and startlingly empty of birdsong, save for one stubborn ibis tracing the edge of the fields with administrator's patience. You blink into the glare and feel your tunic cling to you, thin as damp paper, more ceremony than protection. There is no curtain to draw, no shade to claim. The single strip of shadow beside your wall has already been taken by a neighbor who rose before dawn and now sits with her knees tucked up, eyes closed, face lifted to whatever fragment of breeze might still be wandering the village lanes. You think of oils, the perfumed unguents reserved for temples and the well-appointed houses of the rich, and you smile at the absurdity. Such luxuries do not belong to you. Your remedies are older, humble, and carry the smell of the riverbanks. A pat of mud to cool the skin, a coarse smear that turns you into a clay figurine of yourself. Some swear by darker things, crocodile dung rubbed thin over arms and neck, as if the beast's own hide might be borrowed for an hour. Whether these charms help or merely make the wearer feel braver hardly matters. In a land ruled by a sun god, bravery is sometimes the only shade you can find. The village wakes in fragments, a jar thumping onto a shoulder, a child's quick cry at hot dust between toes, the cough of a man whose lungs have measured too many sandstorms. Farther off, oxen complain as their yokes are set, and a woman's voice, low, even, unstoppable, counts loaves cooling on a ledge that is hot enough to bake them twice. The smell of yesterday's ash clings to everything. It mingles with the faint sweetness of crushed reeds, with sweat, with that particular mineral note you cannot name but always taste at the back of your tongue when the sky is white and unmerciful. To live here is to accept that the sun is not weather, but authority. It does not merely shine, it decrees. It declares the hours when hands must work and the thin moments when hands may rest. It sanctifies the order of things, men to fields and stone, women to grinding stones and water jars and looms, children to the narrow tasks that grow a spine straight even when the world will later bend it. When the heat intensifies, the elders nod as if Ra himself has passed nearer. When the heat relents, they nod again, as if he has glanced elsewhere but remains watchful. Either way, the nod means the same. Do what you were born to do. The day will not do it for you. You drink sparingly, 2 careful swallows from a clay cup that remembers the river better than you do, and you can almost taste the banks in it: silt, papyrus, frog song rendered into mineral. The Nile waits not far away, but the morning path to it always feels longer than it truly is, as if the river recedes at your approach, teasing, testing, asking whether you will persevere. You will, you have. Everyone here has. No one argues with the only water that is both a miracle and a problem. Your feet carry you past walls that lean, past doorways hung with patched cloth, past a tethered goat that watches the day with the weary wisdom of a small god. A breeze finds you for a heartbeat, one heartbeat, and then is gone, as if it, too, must labor elsewhere. The horizon shimmers, practicing deceit. The dunes practice permanence. What changes is you, the way sweat draws a map down your back, the way your breath grows shallow to hide from the heat, the way you lower your gaze to keep the sky from burning the thoughts right out of your head. There are jokes about this life, though they are told softly and never where priests can hear. The one you like best says the Nile vowed to send a cooling wind each morning until the day a careless farmer insulted Sobek, the crocodile lord. Since then, the breeze arrives late and leaves early, and everyone pretends not to know why. The joke is not true, of course, but truth is not what people want from it. They want a story to hold in the mouth like a date, something sweet that also has a pit. A small, hard certainty you can worry with your teeth when the day grows long. You pass a girl balancing a water jar that is almost as tall as she is. Her spine is a reed in a careful hand. She meets your eyes only for an instant, long enough to trade a human acknowledgement across the trench of labor, and then keeps walking, steps measuring out the beat of a song older than drums. An old man, bare-chested, smacks dust from a mat with priestly seriousness. Each strike releases a brown clap that the air swallows at once. A cat slinks from shadow to shadow, declaring ownership with the laziness only gods and cats can afford. Breakfast will be bread and beer, and the knowledge of it steadies you more than either food or drink ever could. Bread thick with the grit that grinds down teeth long before old age does. Beer heavy as liquid grain, warm and cloudy and honest about what it is. Survival in a cup. There will be no fruit bowl, no sugared comfort, no sparkling novelty. There will be fuel and the permission to continue, which is nourishment of a different sort. You will break the loaf with fingers dusted by the same stones that dulled the miller's hands. You will sip what the brewer boiled into safety. You will call it good because it lets you keep moving. You glance at the sky for news. There is none. It is a relentless, tenderless blue that promises nothing and delivers everything anyway. The fields will ask for your back, and you will give it. The stones will ask for your hands, and you will offer them. The river will ask for your fear, and you will set it down at the bank and pretend you can find it later. If the overseer's shadow crosses your path this afternoon, you will make yourself thinner, quieter, less noticeable than the dust that coats you. If a sandstorm rises, you will shut your eyes and mouth and let the desert pass through you the way time does. You tie your belt and feel the day cinch around your waist in the same gesture. A neighbor calls your name. You answer. The sound of it feels practical in your mouth, like a tool with one good edge. Somewhere, someone is already singing, a work song that turns the heat into a rhythm you can step inside like shade. You adjust the strap of your empty jar, test the weight of it, then take your first steps toward the river, the fields, the sun, the countless ordinary miracles that make the difference between life and the long, ordered afterlife everyone here prepares for. The door of your hut swings on its leather hinge and stares at your back as if it, too, knows. The day is a god, and gods must be obeyed. You do not curse that truth. You do not even resent it, not exactly. Instead, you wear it the way you wear your linen, light, inevitable, slightly damp with effort. You are a citizen of heat and river, of sand and order, of bread that remembers the millstone, and beer that remembers the fire. The morning has already written its first paragraph across your skin in fine salt script. The rest of the chapter waits where the Nile widens and the fields begin. You go to meet it, because in this land the sun does not merely rise, it summons, and you, like everyone else who wakes under this unblinking sky, answer. Before you catch even the faintest glimpse of the river, you can smell it. The Nile carries its presence on the air like a quiet announcement, an ancient mixture of silt, fish scales, and the sweet-rot perfume of wet reeds. It is the smell of life itself, a fragrance that has outlived dynasties and will outlast your own heartbeat. The breeze that brings it is warm and heavy, as if it has soaked in every secret whispered by the papyrus thickets along the bank. You quicken your steps without realizing it, because the river is not just a destination. It is the only reason this desert kingdom breathes. The sound follows soon after, a low and patient lap of water against mud, the soft hiss of reed stems bending and rubbing, the occasional splash that might be fish or might be something with teeth. Frogs croak with the self-importance of ancient officials. Insects weave their thin silver music through the morning heat. The Nile does not rush. It does not hurry to greet you. It moves with the confidence of a god that knows you will come, no matter how long the approach. You always come because everything you eat, drink, and build begins here. Without the river, the world around you would be nothing but sand and tombs. When at last you step onto the damp fringe of the bank, the earth changes character beneath your feet. The dry crunch of desert dust softens into cool mud that squelches between your toes, a sudden, almost shocking reminder that water is real and not merely a mirage. You pause and let the air wrap you in its humid cloak. The scent of wet earth rises like incense, and you breathe it as if drawing in the first true breath of the day. Somewhere across the wide water, a boatman shouts a command to his crew, and the echo travels like a slow drumbeat over the gleaming surface. This river is both blessing and hazard, and everyone knows it. It gives grain, fish, and the black silt that turns barren land into bread, but it also hides its teeth. Beneath the brown current, a crocodile may slide like a rumor with jaws wide as the gates of the underworld. Children are taught from the moment they can walk to treat the water as a god, revered, feared, and never trusted. Yet you must use it. There is no tiled bathhouse waiting, no jar of perfumed oils to wash the night's sweat away. Cleansing here means kneeling at the edge and rubbing your own skin with handfuls of coarse river sand until it is both clean and lightly abraded. The elders say the sand scours not just dirt, but bad spirits. Whether that is superstition or simple practicality hardly matters. The ritual leaves your skin stinging and alive, a small price for the feeling of renewal beneath the sun's growing fire. All along the bank, the village gathers. Women stand knee-deep in the shallows, their skirts hitched high as they beat garments against smooth stones in a rhythm older than memory. Lift, twist, strike, rinse, a percussion that seems to belong to the river itself. Children splash and shriek as the first cool water touches their skin, their laughter rising like a sudden flock of birds. Goats and donkeys nose down to drink, untroubled by the human bustle. White ibises stalk through the reeds with a bureaucratic patience, as though auditing each patch of mud for the gods. Privacy is a luxury for palaces. Here, the river is a common stage where every life plays out in full view. Even the smallest moments, wringing a tunic, filling a jar, rinsing a baby's hair, are part of the grand choreography that keeps the village alive. You fill your own jar, a vessel of baked clay almost as tall as your torso. The first lift is easy. The second is a negotiation with gravity. You straighten slowly, muscles trembling, and settle the jar's rounded mouth against the top of your head. Years of practice have taught you the art of balance, the slight forward tilt of the neck, the quiet strength of a spine that must be both rigid and supple. Each step toward home is measured like a prayer. The weight presses down, and yet it steadies you. You are one of 1,000 silent columns moving along the paths, each bearing water as if carrying the Nile itself back into the heart of the village. Not far downstream, a funeral boat glides past. Its prow is painted with vigilant eyes, meant to ward off what the living cannot name. Mourners wail in a high, wavering ribbon of sound that the wind immediately begins to fray. You bow your head, not from personal grief, but from the recognition that in this land, the dead are never far from the living. The Nile is their road as much as yours. Its waters carry both grain for the baker and souls for the gods. The same current that feeds the fields will also, one day, bear your own name into eternity. Nearby, a boy tosses a net, the motion a quick silver arc against the brown water. When he draws it in, the catch flashes like coins in a lazy clerk's hand. A group of girls crouch at the water's edge, braiding each other's hair and gossiping in voices too low for you to catch, but their laughter carries anyway. It mingles with the drone of insects, the slap of wet cloth, the occasional thud of a jar set down too hard. This is the daily music of survival, a song without beginning or end, composed anew every morning, yet unchanged for centuries. You think of the warning a gray-haired neighbor once gave you. The Nile gives, and the Nile laughs. Only now do you understand her meaning. The gifts are obvious: fish, water, fertile soil. But the laughter is sly. It hides in the leeches that cling to ankles, in the stomach cramps that follow a careless sip, in the sudden sweep of flood that can erase a season's labor overnight. To live here is to accept both the gift and the joke, to drink beer with your bread, because boiling and brewing tame the water's secret malice. Even the children drink the thick, yeasty brew. It is not indulgence, but caution, a daily pact with unseen dangers. As the sun climbs higher, the mud beneath your feet begins to warm. The air grows heavier, and a bead of sweat slides down your temple, carrying with it a trace of river salt. You adjust the jar on your head and turn back toward the village. The path home winds between fields, already humming with the work of the day. Farmers bending to weed barley, overseers barking orders that dissolve into the heat. Behind you, the Nile moves on, unhurried and eternal, as if it has all the time in the world. Perhaps it does. For the river, your labor and your life are only passing ripples. For you, the river is everything. Breakfast in ancient Egypt is not an event to linger over. It is an act of necessity, shaped by the same sun that dictates every other rhythm of the day. By the time you return from the river, the village has already awakened into its work. Smoke from small hearths drifts in thin, uneven ribbons, carrying the earthy smell of emmer wheat and the faint bite of crushed onions. Somewhere, a child cries because his feet have found the sharp edge of a stone. Somewhere else, a donkey brays, impatient with the slow hands of the boy tightening its harness. Life begins early here, and the morning is less a gentle start than a firm command. Eat and be ready to labor. The bread that waits for you is heavy and coarse, shaped by hands as worn as the millstones that ground the grain. It is made from emmer, the ancient wheat that resists the desert winds, but carries in its body the grit of the stones that crushed it. Each bite is a meeting of earth and tooth. You can feel the fine sand that hides in the dough, the tiny fragments of stone that no sieve can catch. It will wear down your teeth long before age can. Children learn early that the price of nourishment is a mouth that slowly becomes a collection of flattened ridges. Still, you tear off a piece, chew, and swallow, because to live here is to accept that the desert enters you one grain at a time. Beside the bread sits a jar of beer, but it is not the golden drink of modern imagination. This is liquid bread, thick, cloudy, almost a porridge. It smells faintly of yeast and the damp sweetness of fermented grain. It is warm from the morning air and alive with the promise of safety, for the brewing has boiled away the parasites that lurk in the Nile. Even children drink it, their small hands wrapped around clay cups as if holding the very idea of survival. You lift your own cup and taste the sour edge that speaks of nights spent bubbling in dark jars. It is not a taste to love, but it is a taste you trust. Each swallow is a quiet agreement between human effort and the caprice of the river. If fortune has wandered your way, there might be an onion to slice into the bread's rough heart, or a handful of dates dried to the color of late sunlight. These small blessings carry the sweetness of rarity. You savor them slowly, knowing they will be gone long before your hunger is. Protein is a luxury you scarcely remember. Meat belongs to festivals, or to those who can call on temples and wealth. The rest of you take your strength from the stubborn generosity of grain and the occasional kindness of fruit. It is enough. It must be enough. Around you, the village moves like a single organism. Women grind more wheat, their shoulders already glistening with the morning's labor. The low thud of pestle on stone keeps time with the dull clatter of pots. Children chase each other through narrow lanes, their laughter cutting bright lines through the heavy air. An elder sits cross-legged at the edge of a doorway, mending a fishing net with fingers that still remember the precise motions of youth. Every sound is practical, every movement necessary. There is no waste here. Even play carries the weight of survival. You watch the sun climb higher, the light hardening from gold to white. The heat presses closer, flattening the world into a single shimmering plain. Your linen tunic, damp with river water, begins to dry into stiffness. The smell of the Nile lingers on your skin, a faint mineral tang, a memory of mud. You lick your lips and taste salt and yeast. In a few hours you will be in the fields, or perhaps hauling stones for a temple wall, or chipping a tomb deep into the limestone cliffs. The tasks differ, but the weight is always the same. The gods demand monuments, the land demands grain, and the sun demands your sweat. Somewhere beyond the village, the pharaoh's overseers are already walking the paths, their reed whips coiled at their belts like silent warnings. You have seen their faces, impassive, unreadable, trained to neither smile nor frown. They are the living echo of the pharaoh's will, a reminder that your labor is not merely for survival, but for the order of the cosmos. To falter is to disrupt Ma'at, the divine balance, and that is an offense both earthly and eternal. So you eat your bread and drink your beer, not just to fill your stomach, but to prepare your body for the service of gods and kings. The meal ends without ceremony. There are no plates to clear, no lingering conversation. You brush the crumbs from your lap and stand, stretching the stiffness from your shoulders. The day has already begun to burn, and the work will not wait. Around you, the village disperses like a school of fish, each person sliding into the current of labor that has flowed for centuries. Farmers to their fields, potters to their wheels, scribes to their reed pens. You join them, another thread in the great fabric of a civilization that endures not because it is easy, but because it is unrelenting. As you step into the sun, you feel again the quiet power of this land. It is not the soft power of persuasion or comfort. It is the hard, undeniable power of necessity. The bread in your belly, the beer in your blood, the grit between your teeth, all of it is Egypt itself, moving through you, shaping you as surely as the Nile shapes its banks. The gods may speak through priests and monuments, but they also speak through this daily meal, this humble fuel that turns mortals into builders of eternity. And so, with the taste of earth still on your tongue, you walk toward the fields, ready to offer your strength to a world that will remember your labor long after it has forgotten your name. Work in ancient Egypt does not wait for the sun to finish its climb. By the time the sky has shed its first gold for the harsher white of full morning, you are already deep in the routine that keeps both gods and mortals fed. The fields call first. Barley and emmer do not plant themselves, and the Nile's generous floods, which have left a dark skin of fertile silt, will not stay wet forever. Men bend to the earth, their backs forming a quiet chorus of bowed arches. They pull weeds, scatter seed, and coax water into narrow channels dug by the calloused hands of generations. Each movement is both ordinary and sacred. Every handful of soil is a prayer to the balance of Ma'at, the cosmic order that keeps chaos at bay. If you are a farmer, your tools are few and blunt. Wooden plows pulled by oxen, sickles of sharpened flint, baskets woven from reeds. The air fills with the dusty perfume of soil and sweat, and your skin, already salted by the sun, soon wears a second coat of dark, damp earth. Overseers walk among you with reed whips curled at their belts, symbols of Pharaoh's distant but undeniable will. They do not speak often, for their silence is its own warning. A single glance is enough to quicken your pace. Other work lies beyond the fields. On the limestone cliffs west of the river, gangs of men chisel tombs into the rock, their hammers beating a rhythm that echoes like far-off thunder. Dust coats their throats, turns their coughs into dry rattles. They carve chambers for the dead with a precision that must outlast centuries. A careless strike is more than a mistake. It is a defiance of eternity. Down by the river, crews haul massive stones for temples and causeways. Ropes strain, ramps groan, and every step of the slow ascent is a wager against gravity. A misstep is not only injury, but shame, a flaw written into the monument of a god-king. Women's labor is no less fierce. At home, they grind grain on stones so heavy their shoulders stoop and their spines bend before their hair turns gray. The rasp of stone on stone sings through the courtyards from dawn to dusk, a sound that will wear down their joints as surely as it wears down the wheat. Between these grinding shifts, they carry water, tend children, weave linen from flax so fine it seems woven from air, and still find themselves summoned to the fields when extra hands are needed. Their strength is quiet and uncelebrated, but it is the true scaffolding of the kingdom. The midday sun does not relent. It pounds the land until the mud bricks of your village walls exhale their own stored heat. Sweat runs in small rivers down every spine, and the air itself begins to shimmer as though the world is a pot set to boil. You shield your eyes with a hand roughened by rope and reed, but the light leaks through your fingers, blinding and pure. The Nile glints in the distance like a strip of molten bronze, a reminder of both mercy and menace. To complain is to challenge the gods. The pharaoh, distant in his palace of polished stone and cedar, is not merely a man. He is Horus made flesh, the living embodiment of divine order. His face, carved into statues and painted onto temple walls, watches you even here, in the fields and quarries. To question the endless labor that feeds his glory is to question Ra's own journey across the sky. And so you bow your head, not in despair, but in the weary acceptance of one who knows the universe has its own hierarchy, and that the whip of an overseer is only a shadow of a larger celestial command. When the sun finally begins its slow descent, the air cools only by degrees. The work does not end, it merely changes. Tools are cleaned, animals watered, and the day's yield measured with the same care a scribe gives to his scrolls. Your muscles ache with the honest pain of survival. The dust in your lungs tastes of stone and grain, a flavor that will follow you into sleep. You walk home as the sky turns copper, and for a moment, as the first evening breeze brushes your skin, you almost believe that Ra himself has exhaled in approval. Twilight in Egypt is a brief and precious interlude, a softening of the world before night tightens its black belt across the sky. The sun, which ruled the day like a tyrant, retreats in a blaze of copper and rose. The air cools with a sigh, and the village exhales with it. Children, their energy finally spent, tumble in the dust like little gods of chaos. Women gather at doorways, exchanging the news of fields and hearths in voices that blend with the lowing of cattle and the distant cry of ibises returning to the river reeds. This is the hour of small comforts. A clay lamp flickers to life in your home, fed by a thin wick of twisted flax and a pool of precious oil. Its glow is modest but steady, a fragile defiance of the darkness beyond. The smell of cooking lingers, onion, lentils, perhaps a rare hint of garlic. If the gods have been generous, there may be a few dried fish, their silver skins dulled to pewter. The meal is simple but earned, and the taste carries the quiet satisfaction of work completed. Bread again, of course, and beer that has cooled just enough to be a balm to the throat. You chew slowly, letting the flavors of grain and earth mingle, and listen as the village settles into its evening song. Stories rise with the stars. An elder clears his throat and begins the tale of Osiris and Isis, of the god who died and lived again. of the love that bound the heavens to the underworld. Children lean forward, eyes wide, while their parents nod at familiar turns of phrase. The myths are both entertainment and instruction. They remind everyone that order can be broken and restored, that death is not the end, but a passage. Above you, the first constellations burn into view. Sa, the soul of Osiris, and Sopdet, the bright herald of the flood. The sky becomes a scroll of divine handwriting, and for a moment, the universe feels both immense and intimate. You step outside to breathe the night. The desert, so brutal by day, now offers its gentler face. A cool wind slips through the village like a blessing. Sand, which earlier scorched your feet, now lies cool and forgiving beneath your toes. The moon, nearly full, floats above the horizon like a silver bark. Its light turns the mud brick walls to pale gold and draws long, delicate shadows across the ground. Somewhere in the distance, a jackal cries, and the sound is both eerie and oddly comforting, as though Anubis himself were keeping watch. The pharaoh's presence lingers even now. His name is whispered in prayers for the health of the land. His image carved into temple walls that gleam in the moonlight. To live in his kingdom is to live under the eye of a man who claims both earthly and celestial authority. Yet in this hour, when the stars crowd close and the breeze carries the scent of the Nile, even the pharaoh seems small compared to the vastness of the night. You lie on your back and watch the heavens. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like the white road of the goddess Nut, the great mother who swallows the sun each evening and births it again each dawn. The stories say she bends over the world like a canopy of endless blue, her body studded with stars. You trace her with your eyes and feel the quiet truth of the myth, that the gods are not distant rulers, but companions, written into the very fabric of the night. Sleep comes slowly, carried on the murmur of distant water and the soft rustle of palm fronds. Tomorrow will bring the same heat, the same labor, the same unbroken dialogue between mortal effort and divine order. Yet for now, under the patient gaze of the stars, you belong to something larger than toil or fear. The night is a temple without walls, and every breath is a prayer. Night in ancient Egypt is never truly silent. The desert breathes in subtle tones, the whisper of sand shifting against stone, the far-off bark of a fox, the almost imperceptible hiss of the Nile's current sliding past the reeds. These sounds weave a tapestry of gentle unrest, a reminder that life continues even when the village sleeps. You stir on your mat, the cool air brushing your skin like the edge of a dream, and listen as darkness speaks in its quiet language. The moon, high and bright, bathes the landscape in silver. Mud brick walls glow like pale bones. The palm trees cast long, delicate shadows that sway like slow dancers. In the distance, the pyramids rise, monoliths of shadow and light, their edges softened by the night. They are the eternal sentinels of a people who believe that death is not an ending, but a gateway. Even now, centuries after their first stones were set, they seem less like human achievements and more like mountains. The gods forgot to move. You think of the pharaoh, the living Horus, whose tomb will one day rival these monuments. His life is a constant negotiation with eternity. Scribes record his deeds in careful hieroglyphs. Priests chant his name in temples where incense coils like captured smoke. His face is carved in stone so that the wind itself will remember him. And yet, beneath the moon's impartial gaze, Even a god king is only another shadow among many. A cool breeze drifts from the river, carrying the damp sweetness of papyrus and the faint metallic scent of water on stone. It slips through the village like a blessing, stirring the hair on your arms. You rise and step outside. The sand, now cool and soft, yields under your feet like sifted flour. Overhead, the stars form patterns you know by heart: the hunter Sa, the bright dog star Sopdet, the unending river of the Milky Way. These constellations are more than ornaments. They are maps, calendars, prophecies. They tell you when the flood will come, when to sow, when to harvest, when to honor the gods with festivals of light and music. Somewhere near the edge of the village, a priest keeps vigil in a small temple lit by a single oil lamp. He offers prayers to Osiris, lord of the afterlife, and to Isis, mother of magic, asking for protection through the hours of darkness. His voice, low and steady, drifts across the sand like a thread of smoke. It mingles with the rustle of the palms and the quiet sigh of the Nile, creating a music that belongs to no one and to everyone. You lie back on the cool ground and let the night seep into you. The worries of the day, the aching muscles, the overseer's hard eyes, the endless demands of survival fade beneath the vast, patient sky. Here, under the gaze of gods and stars, you feel both small and infinite. Tomorrow, the sun will rise, and Ra will summon you again to labor and obedience. But tonight, wrapped in the desert's gentle breath, you are part of a larger story, one that began before the first stone was set and will continue long after the last grain of sand has recorded your name. Morning's brief gentleness has vanished, and the day stretches like a forge. By mid-morning, the light is a hammer, each beam striking the earth until the very air rings with heat. You leave the village with your tools slung across one shoulder, a wooden hoe polished by years of sweat, a coil of rope that smells faintly of the river, a small clay jar of beer thick as porridge. The path to the fields is already crowded with the quiet procession of workers, each carrying his own small arsenal against the demands of the land. The ground, black with the silt left behind by the Nile's retreating flood, bears the smell of wet stone and old fish, a perfume of fertility that clings to your skin. The barley stands half-grown, its green blades trembling in the faintest hint of breeze. Here the overseer waits, a reed whip looped loosely at his side, his eyes scanning the lines of workers with the calm of a hawk. He does not shout. He does not need to. His presence is a silent proclamation of Pharaoh's will. You bow your head and step into the rhythm of labor. The hoe bites the soil with a sound that is almost music. Thud, pull, scatter, thud. An endless heartbeat that belongs as much to the earth as to you. Sweat slicks your back within minutes. Your breath becomes another instrument in the field's long song of effort. All around you, the village bends itself to the same task. Men guide oxen through the furrows, their animals' hooves sinking deep into the rich black mud. Women work beside them, their skirts tied high, scattering seed in arcs of careful grace. Children carry baskets of water from the canals and pour it into the thirsty earth, their small hands red with effort. This is not merely farming. It is the delicate negotiation of a covenant older than any temple. If you honor the river and the gods who govern its floods, the land will feed you. If you falter, the desert will return and claim what it once owned. Far to the west, a different kind of work unfolds. There, teams of men drag massive limestone blocks up ramps of packed gravel, building the tombs of kings. The air shivers with the sound of wooden sleds creaking, ropes groaning under the strain. Barefoot laborers chant in rough unison, a rhythm to match the dangerous weight they haul. Each stone is a fragment of eternity, each chant a small insurance against the silence of death. The foreman's voice rises above the grunts of effort, not in anger, but in the measured cadence of command. One slip of the rope, one misjudged step, and the stone will crush not just flesh, but a family's future. And yet the work goes on, because the pharaoh's tomb must stand flawless, and the gods must be honored with perfection. The sun climbs higher, bleaching the sky to a white so fierce it seems to erase the horizon. Your shadow shrinks until it clings only to your feet, a dark reminder of the self you are too tired to contemplate. The Nile glints in the distance like molten bronze, its surface trembling with mirage. A heron rises from the reeds and glides across the heat, its wings slow and deliberate, a moving hieroglyph against the blank sky. You pause for a heartbeat, jar in hand, and swallow a mouthful of warm, sour beer. The liquid is heavy, almost a food, and it steadies you like a hand on the shoulder. Then you lower your head and return to the work, because the field, like the gods, is never satisfied. By late afternoon, the fields are a vast green sea under a sun that has finally begun its slow descent. The light softens from white to gold, and for the first time all day, you dare to look at the sky without squinting. A breeze slides in from the river, carrying the damp sweetness of papyrus and the faint metallic scent of water. It is a small mercy, and everyone feels it. The overseer's whip hangs idle now. Even he, servant of Pharaoh, an enforcer of Ma'at, cannot deny the relief of the cooling air. You straighten your back and feel every muscle protest. Your arms, heavy from hours of hoeing, hang like ropes. The sweat that soaked your tunic has dried into a stiff crust of salt, and when you touch your skin, you feel the fine grit of soil embedded there. Around you, workers begin to gather their tools, the sound of wooden handles clattering together like dry bones. Children run to fetch water, their laughter ringing across the field like bells. For a moment, the day feels almost gentle, as if the sun, having tested your endurance, now grants a brief reprieve. The walk home is a slow unraveling of the day's tension. The path follows the canal's curve, where frogs croak in the reeds and dragonflies flicker like living jewels. The air grows cooler with every step, and the scent of damp earth rises in waves. You pass other groups of workers, women balancing water jars on their heads, men carrying bundles of cut reeds, children chasing each other through the dust. The village ahead is a scatter of mud brick houses, glowing amber in the late light, smoke from cooking fires curling upward in thin gray ribbons. At home, the evening meal awaits. It is simple: lentils stewed with onions, a loaf of bread still warm from the communal oven, and the thick, yeasty beer that has become the kingdom's quiet shield against the river's unseen dangers. The flavors are humble but satisfying. The earthiness of the lentils, the sharp sweetness of onions, the comforting sourness of the beer. As you eat, you listen to the low murmur of conversation, the occasional burst of laughter, the gentle clink of clay cups. The day's hardships recede, replaced by the small comforts of food, family, and the shared understanding that tomorrow will demand the same effort. When darkness falls, the village gathers in the central courtyard where a storyteller begins his evening work. His voice, roughened by age and dust, carries the ancient tales of gods and heroes, of Osiris who died and rose again, of Isis who wove magic from grief, of the battles fought in the sky when the forces of chaos dared to challenge the order of Ma'at. Children lean forward, eyes wide, their faces lit by the flickering oil lamps. Parents nod at familiar turns of phrase, hearing in the myths the echoes of their own struggles and hopes. The stories are not mere entertainment. They are the scaffolding of belief, the blueprint of a universe where life and death, order and chaos endlessly circle each other. Above, the stars reveal themselves one by one, bright and steady in the deepening blue. Sopdet, the dog star, shines like a spearhead. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like the white river of the goddess Nut. The night is cool now, the air soft with the scent of baked earth and distant water. You lie back on the packed sand, the day's labor still humming in your bones, and watch as the heavens write their eternal text. Tomorrow will bring the same toil, the same heat, the same careful dance between survival and devotion. But for now, under this patient sky, you feel yourself part of something vast and unending, a single heartbeat in the great body of Egypt. Night deepens, and with it comes a quiet that is not absence, but presence, a subtle music made of wind and water, of creatures stirring in the dark. The desert, which by day roars with light, now whispers. Sand shifts against stone with the sound of a sigh. The Nile slides past the reeds with a soft hiss like distant applause. A fox barks far off, its cry a single note of wildness against the stillness. You sit outside your house, the cool mud brick wall against your back, and let the night seep into your skin. The moon rises fat and bright, turning the village into a landscape of silver and shadow. Mud brick houses glow like pale gold. Palm fronds move with slow, deliberate grace. The pyramids on the distant horizon stand as dark silhouettes against the sky, their ancient faces catching the moonlight like mirrors of eternity. They are not merely tombs, they are promises in stone, declarations that death is only another kind of life. You gaze at them and feel both awe and a quiet kinship, as if the labor of men long dead still speaks directly to you. A breeze drifts from the river, carrying the cool scent of water and the faint metallic tang of silt. It slips through the village like a blessing, lifting a child's hair, stirring the wick of an oil lamp, brushing your skin with fingers as light as thought. Somewhere a priest chants a midnight prayer to Osiris, asking for safe passage through the hours of darkness. His voice, low and measured, drifts across the sand and mingles with the soft rustle of palm leaves. It is a music without audience and yet meant for everyone, a thread connecting mortal and divine. You lie back and trace the constellations, Sa the hunter, Sopdet the herald of the flood, the endless white road of the Milky Way. These stars are more than decoration. They are the kingdom's calendar and compass. They tell when the river will rise, when the fields must be sown, when festivals of light and song must honor the gods. To look at them is to read the will of the heavens, to glimpse the pattern that binds earth and sky. Your thoughts drift toward the pharaoh, the living Horus, whose name is etched in every stone and whispered in every prayer. Even now, as he sleeps in his palace of cedar and alabaster, his presence threads through the night like another constellation. His life is a dialogue with eternity, and the monuments raised in his name are promises that his spirit will sail the sky long after his body rests in the earth. Under this moon, even kings are only travelers, and the gods alone are permanent. Sleep gathers slowly. You close your eyes and feel the night settle over you like a second skin. The day's labors fade to a distant echo. The overseer's whip, the heat of the sun, the grit of the bread, all become memories softened by the cool breath of darkness. Tomorrow will bring the same demands, the same hard grace of survival. But tonight the desert is gentle. The river sings its quiet song, and the stars hold you in their patient, unblinking gaze. In their light, you are both small and infinite, a single life in the eternal story of Egypt. The first streaks of dawn are still a pale gray when the village stirs again, but the silence of night has already broken. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Ra begins his daily ascent, and the air feels tense with expectation. The stars fade one by one, retreating before the faint glow that seeps across the eastern sky. You rise from your mat and feel the coolness of the mud brick floor under your feet. A brief, fragile comfort that will vanish as soon as the sun's power returns. The scent of the Nile lingers from the night breeze, papyrus and wet clay, the metallic tang of water that has traveled through the veins of a kingdom. You draw a deep breath as though you could store the coolness inside you for the long day ahead. The village is waking in quiet layers. A child whimpers as a mother gently lifts him from sleep. Somewhere, a donkey shakes its head, the soft clank of its tether ringing in the half-light. A potter's apprentice yawns and stirs the ashes of yesterday's kiln, coaxing the embers into life with slow, patient breaths. Above all of it hangs the anticipation of heat. Every movement, every sound, carries the knowledge that the coming hours will be ruled by the sun, that the morning's soft gray will soon blaze into the unrelenting white of noon. You step outside, and the air is cool against your skin, but already you can feel the promise of rising temperature hidden inside the breeze. The village lanes, still damp with night, carry the smell of smoke from rekindled hearths. Women crouch beside grinding stones, their rhythmic motions the heartbeat of daily bread. The rasp of stone on grain is almost a song, low and insistent, like a prayer offered without words. Sparks of orange flicker where oil lamps still burn, and for a moment the world is balanced between darkness and light. The path to the river is familiar, yet never quite the same. The soil, dark with the memory of flood, glistens faintly under the first touches of sunlight. Reeds sway with a slow grace, whispering secrets to one another. Frogs croak a ragged chorus, their voices echoing across the still water. A heron lifts from the shallows, its wings unfolding like a scroll of pale hieroglyphs. You pause to watch it glide over the surface, the reflection of its long neck rippling like the writing of the gods. For a heartbeat, you feel as if you too are weightless, carried by an unseen current. At the river's edge, life has already begun. Women kneel with their skirts tucked high, beating clothes against smooth stones in the old, unbroken rhythm. Lift, twist, strike, rinse. Children splash and shriek in the shallows, their laughter skipping across the water like thrown pebbles. Men guide their small fishing boats into the current, poles pushing against the muddy bottom with slow, deliberate strength. The Nile itself seems half awake, its broad back shimmering in the growing light, carrying the sense of silt and papyrus and the quiet authority of a god. You fill your jar and lift it to your head, the weight settling into the practiced curve of your spine. Each step back toward the village is a negotiation with balance and strength, an unspoken ritual that binds you to the thousands who have walked this same path for centuries. The day gathers speed. By the time you return, the village is fully alive. Children chase each other through narrow lanes, their bare feet kicking up small clouds of dust. Farmers shoulder their tools and head for the fields. The lowing of oxen mingles with the chatter of sparrows. In every doorway, the smell of baking bread mingles with the sharp tang of onions. Breakfast is, as it always is, the coarse bread, heavy with the grit of the millstone. The thick, sour beer, whose warmth is less comfort than necessity. You chew and swallow with the quiet efficiency of one who knows that food is fuel, not pleasure. The bread will grind down your teeth long before age claims them, but it gives strength enough for the work to come. Even the children drink the beer, their small faces solemn as they lift clay cups. It is not indulgence, but survival, a small victory over the parasites the river carries. When the sun clears the horizon, its light hardens from gold to white, and the village exhales a collective sigh of resignation. The coolness of dawn is gone, replaced by the first heat of the day. You sling your hoe across your shoulder and join the slow procession toward the fields. The path is alive with movement, men and women carrying tools, children bearing small bundles of seed, goats bleating as they are led to pasture. The air smells of earth and smoke, of sweat and distant water. Overhead, the sky is a vast, unbroken blue, a dome of promise and warning. In the fields, the work begins anew. Oxen pull wooden plows through the dark, fertile soil, their hooves sinking deep into the mud. Men follow, scattering seed with practiced hands. Women bend to weed and water, their skirts tied high, their backs gleaming with sweat. Children carry jars of river water to pour into the thirsty furrows. The overseer moves among them, reed whip coiled at his belt, his eyes sharp, but his voice rarely raised. He does not need to shout. His presence alone is enough to keep the rhythm steady. Each stroke of the hoe, each drop of water, each careful handful of seed is both survival and devotion, a daily offering to the gods who govern flood and harvest. By midday, the sun is a white flame overhead. The air quivers with heat, and your shadow shrinks to a dark patch at your feet. Sweat runs down your back in thin, relentless streams. You pause to drink from your jar of beer, the warm liquid heavy and sour on your tongue, and feel it steady your breath. The Nile glints in the distance, a strip of molten bronze. A heron glides low over the reeds, its cry a sharp, lonely note in the shimmering silence. The day is only half done, and already your muscles ache with the honest pain of work. When at last the overseer raises his hand, signaling the end of the day's first labor, you straighten slowly, your back protesting with every movement. The fields lie green and damp beneath the merciless sky, and you feel a quiet pride in the work completed. As you shoulder your tools and begin the walk back to the village, the breeze from the river carries a hint of coolness, a promise that evening will bring its own small mercies. You glance once more at the wide, shining ribbon of the Nile and whisper a silent thanks to the river, to the gods, to the ancient balance that allows life to continue here, day after unrelenting day. The late afternoon begins like a slow exhale. After the blistering cruelty of midday, the light softens and the horizon loosens its hard white glare. The green of the barley fields deepens to a richer hue, and a thin breeze carries the faint sweetness of wet reeds from the river. You feel it on the back of your neck like the cool hand of a patient friend. For the first time since dawn, you straighten fully and let your shoulders fall. The day's labor has marked you. Dust on your skin, salt drying at the edges of your tunic, a heaviness in your limbs that is almost a kind of peace. Around you, the field workers gather their tools with the quiet relief of people who know the day's work is done, but tomorrow's is already waiting. The overseer, who all day has been a silent sentinel with whip coiled at his side, relaxes his stance and speaks in a voice that sounds almost human. A few words of praise, a reminder of the next task, then he too turns toward the village path. The sun, lowering now, sets the river alight in bands of copper and rose. The sky above becomes a vast scroll of fading blue, its edges already inked with the first faint stars. The walk home is unhurried. Children race ahead, their bare feet scattering tiny clouds of dust that catch the evening light. Women balance water jars on their heads with the poise of dancers, their shadows long and graceful across the path. Men carry bundles of cut reeds, their voices low as they trade the day's small stories. An ox gone lame, a tool that needs mending, a rumor of a priest's new prophecy. Every step draws you closer to the comforting smells of smoke and bread, of onion and lentils simmering in clay pots. When you reach the village, the first lamps flicker to life. Thin wicks of flax drink the precious oil and burn with a steady golden flame. Children sit cross-legged around an elder who begins the evening tale of Isis and her patient magic, of Osiris who died and rose again, of Horus whose eye sees all. The story moves like a river through the gathered crowd, carrying both warning and hope. Parents nod at familiar turns, their faces softened by the glow. The myths are not simply diversion. They are the memory of the people, the charter of their world, proof that chaos can be defeated and that the sun will indeed rise again. As the stars sharpen overhead, you step outside the circle of light and look up. Sopdet, the bright dog star, gleams like a drop of molten silver. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like the white road of the goddess Nut. A cool wind drifts from the river, and the sand beneath your feet, scorched and hostile at noon, now feels like sifted flour. The night carries a quiet music, the distant cry of a jackal, the whisper of palm fronds, the soft rush of the Nile's eternal current. You breathe deeply, and for a moment the weight of the day lifts. The gods are near, the stars are patient, and you are simply a heartbeat in the endless story of Egypt. Before the first hint of dawn, the village already murmurs with quiet movement. Night's last cool breath lingers like a fading dream, and you rise while the stars are still sharp above the dark horizon. The Milky Way hangs like a pale river in the sky, the mirrored twin of the Nile below. Frogs croak lazily in the reeds, and from far across the water comes the muffled thump of a fisherman's pole striking his boat's side. The world is awake, though the sun has yet to show its face. You step outside into air that still carries a trace of night's gentleness. Mud brick walls, silvered by moonlight, seem softer than they will under the coming day's blaze. The ground is cool beneath your feet. The sand, which will soon burn like an iron plate, now yields like sifted flour. Women move like quiet shadows between houses, balancing jars on their heads, voices low as they greet each other with the unhurried confidence of those who know the rhythm of the Nile. The scent of smoke rises from rekindled hearths. Onion, lentils, a faint sweetness of bread dough already taking shape beneath patient hands. By the river, the first boats are sliding from the reeds. Fishermen push their poles deep into the dark water, sending small ripples shimmering like strips of beaten silver. A heron lifts into the paling sky, its wings a slow, deliberate opening of script across the heavens. You fill your jar at the bank, feeling the cool weight of the Nile's gift settle against your palms. The water smells of silt and life, of mud and distance. It is both miracle and menace, the lifeblood of the fields and the keeper of crocodiles. You balance the jar on your head, your spine finding its familiar, careful curve, and begin the slow walk home as the eastern horizon starts to blush. The village greets the first touch of sunlight with the calm of long practice. Men shoulder their tools, wooden hoes worn smooth, coils of rope stiff with old sweat. Children trail behind, carrying baskets of seed or small bundles of reeds. The overseer waits at the path's edge, his reed whip coiled like a sleeping serpent, his face unreadable in the growing light. No words are needed. His presence is command enough. You fall into the quiet procession toward the fields, each footstep a thread in the tapestry of survival. The work begins as the sun lifts clear of the horizon. Oxen strain against wooden plows, their breath rising in white clouds that vanish almost before they form. Men bend low to scatter seed across the rich black soil, the remnants of the Nile's generous flood. Women follow, weeding and watering, their backs shining with early sweat. Children carry jars of water from the canals, their small hands trembling under the weight. The field becomes a living hymn to the gods who govern flood and harvest. Every motion, hoe striking soil, seed hitting earth, water spilling from jars, is both labor and prayer, an offering to the unseen order that holds chaos at bay. As the morning grows, the heat begins its slow assault. The soft gold of dawn hardens into a relentless white, and your shadow shrinks beneath your feet. Sweat traces a map down your spine. The scent of wet soil gives way to the dry metallic tang of dust. You pause only long enough to drink from your jar of beer. Warm, thick, sour, the taste of safety brewed from grain and necessity. The overseer's eyes pass over you and move on. Work continues. The gods must be served. The land must be fed. By midday, the air shimmers as though the sky itself has caught fire. You straighten for a moment and glance toward the river. Its surface glints like molten bronze, a promise of life and a warning of power. A heron skims the water, its cry a single sharp note of loneliness. You wipe your brow with the back of your hand and return to the rhythm of the hoe, the heartbeat of the field. Around you, the land breathes in time with your labor, and you understand again the ancient truth every Egyptian carries, that survival is both duty and devotion, and that each day's work is a small echo of eternity. The afternoon wears its heat like a crown. By now, the sun stands high and merciless, a white disk that drains color from everything beneath it. The fields shimmer in a wavering haze. The far horizon blurs into an uncertain line where sand and sky dissolve into one another. Sweat gathers at the base of your neck and slides down your spine in slow, persistent trails. Each movement of the hoe feels heavier than the last, as if the earth itself has grown more stubborn. Yet the work continues, for the seed must meet the soil before the season turns, and the gods who govern the Nile do not wait for human weariness. The overseer moves among the workers like a dark punctuation mark in the brightness, his reed whip curled loosely at his belt. He rarely speaks. The sharpness of his gaze is command enough. Men and women labor side by side, backs bent, muscles gleaming, tunics clinging to their bodies with the dampness of effort. Children carry water from the canal, their small feet sinking into the black silt, leaving prints that fill instantly with the seep of the river. The air is filled with the scents of damp earth, sweat, and the faint metallic tang of sun-baked mud. It is a music of survival, the thud of the hoe, the hiss of water poured onto dry roots, the low calls of oxen straining at their yokes. Near the edge of the field, a young boy begins to sing, a thin, high melody that wavers like a dragonfly over the reeds. One by one, others join in, their voices weaving together in a rough harmony that rises above the hiss of the wind. It is not a song for entertainment, but a tool against exhaustion, a rhythm to steady tired muscles and keep despair at bay. The lyrics speak of the Nile's generosity, of the sun's eternal journey across the sky, of the promise that Ma'at, the cosmic order, will hold even when mortal strength falters. You find yourself humming along, the tune stitching itself into the steady beat of your work. As the hours pass, the shadows grow long, and the fierce white of the sky softens to a pale gold. The overseer finally raises his hand, and a slow ripple of relief passes through the field. Tools are gathered, baskets lifted, and the workers turn toward the village with the unspoken agreement that tomorrow, the same cycle will begin again. You straighten your back, feeling the ache of muscles stretched to their limits, and wipe the salt from your brow. The air now carries a hint of coolness, a promise that evening will soon lay its gentle hand upon the land. The path home follows the canal's curve, where frogs croak in the reeds and dragonflies hover like flecks of living emerald. The smell of water and mud is strong here, a reminder of the river's double nature, both life-giver and silent predator. You pass a fisherman mending his nets, his fingers quick and sure despite the fading light. Children race ahead, their laughter ringing like small bells against the coming dusk. Smoke begins to rise from village hearths, thin blue threads that catch the dying sun. By the time you reach the first mud brick houses, the sky is a canvas of amber and rose. Women call to one another as they draw water for the evening meal. Men stack tools against the walls of their homes. You catch the familiar fragrance of lentils simmering with onions and garlic, the humble feast that waits after a day of toil. The first stars appear, Sopdet burning bright, the white river of the Milky Way stretching across the darkening sky. You pause for a moment, the weight of the day settling into your bones, and feel both the weariness of a mortal and the quiet pride of one who has helped keep the great machine of Egypt turning. Night will soon bring its own chorus, the soft rush of the Nile, the rustle of palm fronds, the distant cry of jackals in the desert. For now, as you step into the warm glow of your home, and the voices of family and neighbors rise to greet you, you carry with you the ancient certainty that tomorrow's dawn will find you ready once again, bound to the river, the sun, and the endless rhythm that makes this harsh, beautiful land your home. The night has settled like a vast, dark canopy over the desert, and the heat of the day now lingers only as a memory on the cooling stones. The village breathes in quiet unison, children already asleep on reed mats, elders sitting in low doorways, their silhouettes silvered by the moon. The Nile, just beyond the palm grove, glints like a slow-moving ribbon of mercury. Its broad surface reflects the stars so faithfully that for a moment you cannot tell where the sky ends and the river begins. You stand at the edge of this double cosmos, listening to the gentle hush of water on mud, and feel the distance between mortal and divine shrink to the width of a heartbeat. A soft breeze stirs the palm fronds, carrying the scents of damp earth and smoke from the last of the evening fires. Far off, a jackal cries, a single sharp note that seems to travel for miles across the sleeping land. Somewhere closer, a night bird answers with a low, throaty call. These sounds, faint and unhurried, weave themselves into the fabric of darkness like threads of an ancient song. The desert, which by day blazes with light and life, now whispers secrets only the patient can hear. You walk toward the riverbank, your feet sinking slightly into the cool sand. Each step releases the faint, sweet scent of night-blooming flowers hidden among the reeds. The moon rides high, round and luminous, turning the mud brick houses behind you into pale gold shapes. Their sharp edges soften, doorways blur into gentle shadows. It is as though the village itself has entered a dream. You pause and let the silence envelop you, the air cool and almost damp against your skin. The memory of the sun's fury is distant now, like an old wound that no longer burns. Near the water's edge, a small group has gathered, fishermen preparing their boats for a night journey. They move with quiet efficiency, their oars and nets laid out like instruments in a ceremony. One man hums a low tune, and the others join him until the air vibrates with a slow, steady rhythm. It is not a song for the living alone. It is a call to the gods of the river, Sobek, lord of crocodiles, and Khnum, the ram-headed potter who shaped the first men from the clay of the Nile. The melody drifts across the water, carrying both reverence and the practical hope that the river will be generous tonight. A priest steps from the shadow of a palm and kneels at the bank. He wears a simple linen kilt, his chest bare, a single string of beads catching the moonlight. He lifts his hands and begins a prayer to Osiris, Lord of the afterlife. His voice is low, but carries clearly over the quiet water. He speaks of safe passage for the dead, of the eternal journey through the underworld, of the promise that life and death are but two sides of the same divine design. The fishermen bow their heads, and even the night birds fall silent for a heartbeat, as if listening. You close your eyes and let the words wash over you. Though the priest's language is ancient and formal, you feel its meaning without effort. The reassurance that the world is ordered, that death is not chaos, but a crossing, that the gods are present even in the stillness of midnight. When you open your eyes, the river seems wider, the stars brighter, the very air charged with a quiet, unseen power. Slowly, the fishermen push their boats into the current. The water parts with a soft hiss, and the moonlight turns each ripple to silver. Their voices fade into the distance, leaving only the gentle sound of the river and the occasional rustle of reeds. You stand for a long moment, watching until the last boat becomes a dark silhouette against the glowing path of the moon. As you turn back toward the village, the breeze carries the scent of baking bread. Someone, somewhere, already preparing for the morning meal. The night has not yet given way to dawn, but the first tasks of a new day have begun. You feel the pull of sleep, heavy and sweet, and make your way home along the sand-lit path. Overhead, the Milky Way stretches across the sky like the white road of the goddess Nut, a reminder that even in darkness the journey continues. Tomorrow the sun will rise, and Ra will summon you again to labor, but tonight, under the watchful eyes of gods and stars, you belong to a quieter, deeper rhythm, the eternal breathing of the Nile and the endless heart of Egypt. Market day begins with the river's hush and the scuff of sandals on packed earth. Before the sun climbs to its merciless height, the village path thickens with bodies, farmers carrying baskets of onions and barley, potters balancing stacks of shallow bowls that kiss with a dry ceramic whisper, women guiding goats that tug at the lead and nibble the edges of palm fronds. You join the flow with your own small cargo, a bundle of linen you helped weave during the dim hours between dusk and sleep, its threads clean and tight as a good promise. The marketplace is nothing grand. No stone colonnades, no carved gates, only a widening of the road where shade gathers under a few patient palms. Yet it feels like the center of a world. Smells layer themselves into a living tapestry. Warm bread from a communal oven, fish laid on wet rush mats, crushed garlic, sweat, damp clay, smoke. Voices overlap in a soft, persistent hum. Greetings, haggles, laughter quickly smothered when an overseer passes. The sing-song pitches of children who barter as if they were grown. A scribe has set up near the granary wall, a reed pen tucked behind his ear, his wooden palette bright with cakes of black and red ink. His posture carries the careful arrogance of one who speaks to gods by drawing their words. Farmers come to him with measures of barley due to the storehouse, and he records each offering in an elegant current of signs that look, to your tired eyes, like small birds and bent reeds learning to dance. He weighs and notes without hurry, exact as the river's flood, unblinking as the sun. When a man tries to shave a handful from his measure, the scribe does not scold. He merely looks up, and the look is enough. The farmer blushes, adds the missing grain, and bows himself away. You trade the linen to a potter for 2 bowls and a small jar whose lid fits as neatly as a thought. The potter's hands are the color of riverbanks, nails rimmed in permanent silt. He taps each bowl with a knuckle. The ring tells him whether the firing was clean. You listen for the music and the sound and almost hear it. Strength, evenness, the promise that this vessel will not fail under heat and soup and the hard clatter of daily use. When the trade is done, you touch the jar's cool flank and feel, beneath the clay, the invisible labor of water and fire and breath. Egypt is a kingdom of such transformations. At the edge of the crowd, a healer displays bundles of dried herbs tied with flax string, mint for stomachs punished by the river, willow bark for the ache that sits between shoulder and neck after long days in the fields, a dark powder that smells like bitter smoke and is said to chase fever. Old women pause, sniff, consider, and buy just enough to seem prudent. Children linger at a stall where a boy sells date cakes pressed into little molds of fish and lotus, a sweetness that sticks to the teeth and for a moment makes the heat tolerable. News moves as quickly as trade. A mason says the quarry upriver has yielded stone with fewer veins, good for carving the straight faces a temple demands. A fisherman swears he saw crocodile eyes like coals drifting under the moon beyond the east reeds. The mothers draw their children closer without appearing to do so. A priest reports that Sopdet shone brighter last night, an omen, perhaps, that the next flood will arrive on time. People nod in a weary, hopeful unison. Timely, not generous. Generous floods drown. The difference between blessing and disaster is only ever the width of a hand. Near noon, light hardens. Shade shrinks like a frightened animal. Traders pull their goods closer. Voices grow short. Bargaining blunts into simple prices. You step inside the granary's cool mouth to deliver the last of your grain tally. Inside, the air smells of dust and mouse, of old straw, and the human patience it takes to count what a kingdom eats. Men lift baskets into the darkness, and the darkness swallows them, building a hill of winter insurance no one will touch unless the river fails its promise. When you emerge, the sun stands like a white coin hammered flat against the sky. The market thins to a shimmer. You tuck your jar under your arm, wedge the bowls with linen, and begin the slow walk home along the canal. Dragonflies stitch light over the water. A heron freezes in place, then strikes and lifts a fish in a glint of silver. A child runs past with a palm leaf fan, delighted by the small wind he makes. The world hums with tired satisfaction, as if the day itself had bargained fairly and may now rest. Back in the village, you set the new bowls by the hearth and pour a little water into the jar just to hear the sound. A soft, hollow note, cool as shade. The house smells of onion and lentil, that honest pair. Outside, a neighbor beats dust from a mat. Each strike releases a brown clap the air swallows whole. You sit in the doorway, legs outstretched, and let the heat work at your bones until they go light and strange. The market's voices linger in your ear, the scribe's measured tone, the potter's testing ring, the healer's papery whisper, and you feel, in their echo, the careful mechanisms that keep this hard land gentle enough to live in. Evening will come. The lamp will take its small flame. The stories will climb the air like smoke, and the stars will take their positions over the river's black mirror. Tomorrow, there will be fields again, and measures, and the same deliberate exchanges of labor for survival. But for now, with the clay still cool in your hands and the taste of date on your tongue, the kingdom seems almost simple. Keep the balance, honor the flood, trust the record, mend the bowl when it chips, and do not, no matter how tempting the hush of water at night, step too close to the reeds. By the time the next dawn draws its first gray line across the eastern sky, the village is already in motion. The memory of market day still clings to you like a faint perfume of smoke and date sugar, but the world allows no long indulgence. Ra will soon set the horizon aflame, and the cycle of work and worship must continue. You rise before the stars have fully faded, the mat beneath you cool from the night air, and step into the courtyard where the first oil lamps sputter their final breaths. The air tastes of damp clay and last night's ashes. Women are already at the grinding stones, their shoulders rolling in the slow rhythm of bread's beginning. The rasp of stone on grain carries through the lanes like a soft percussion, steady and inevitable. Children chase each other through the half-light, their laughter small and sharp as the crack of papyrus reeds. Somewhere, a donkey brays, impatient for its morning load. The scent of baking bread mixes with the bitter tang of smoke, and you know that soon the village will be fully awake. You join the quiet procession toward the river, balancing an empty jar against your hip. The path is lined with reeds heavy with dew, each drop catching the first hints of dawn and shining like fragments of fallen stars. Frogs croak a lazy chorus, and somewhere deeper in the marsh, a heron lifts in slow, deliberate flight. The water itself is a mirror of pale silver, holding the fading constellations, even as the first pink of morning spreads across its surface. You kneel to fill your jar and feel the cool weight of the Nile settle against your palms. Its scent is both earthy and metallic, a reminder that this river is at once provider and predator. As you straighten, a soft breeze brushes your cheek, carrying the smell of night-blooming flowers and the faint, sweet rot of papyrus. It is a fragile blessing, one that will vanish when the sun gains strength. You balance the jar on your head, the familiar pull in your neck and spine a quiet test of strength, and turn toward the fields. Behind you, the river slides on, patient and eternal, its surface rippling with secrets you will never fully know. The work begins as the first gold touches the tops of the palms. Oxen strain against wooden plows. Men scatter seed with measured gestures. Women bend to weed, their backs gleaming in the young sun. The overseer walks the furrows, reed whip coiled, but silent, his presence a reminder that every stroke of the hoe is not only survival, but obedience to Pharaoh's distant will. Children carry jars of water from the canals, their small faces set in the solemn concentration of those who already understand the weight of necessity. The rhythm of labor builds, thud of hoe, splash of water, the low calls of oxen, an earthy hymn to the gods who guard the flood. By mid-morning, the heat tightens its grip. Shadows shorten. The black soil gives off a damp, metallic scent as it drinks the last of the river's night-cool gift. Sweat beads on your forehead and slides down your back, mixing with the fine grit of soil until your skin feels coated in a second, rough layer. You pause only to drink from a clay cup of beer, thick, sour, and warm, a familiar shield against the unseen dangers of the water. The taste is no pleasure, but it steadies the body and soothes the thirst the sun is quick to summon. From the western cliffs comes the distant percussion of chisels on stone. Quarrymen carve tombs for nobles and priests, each strike a promise of eternity, each echo a reminder that even kings must plan their journey beyond death. The sound carries across the fields like a slow drumbeat, mingling with the songs of the workers. It is a music of endurance, a harmony of dust and devotion. As the sun climbs toward its zenith, the overseer signals a brief rest. You straighten slowly, feeling the ache of muscles stretched to their limits, and look toward the river. Its broad surface glints like hammered bronze, and a single heron drifts low over the reeds, its cry a thin silver thread against the blue. You breathe the heavy air and feel both the fatigue of flesh and the quiet pride of one who belongs to the unbroken rhythm of the Nile. Tomorrow will bring the same toil, but also the same certainty, that in honoring the river and the gods, you help keep the world itself in balance. The afternoon begins to soften, though the sun still burns white above the horizon. After the long hours in the fields, every sense seems sharpened, the smell of damp soil cooling in the first hints of evening, the distant ring of chisels from the cliffside tombs, the lowing of oxen released from their yokes. Your body aches in the way that feels almost honest, each muscle humming with the effort of survival. Dust clings to your skin in a fine gray film. When you wipe your forehead, the sweat leaves pale streaks across your arm, like small, accidental hieroglyphs. You shoulder your hoe and follow the slow procession back toward the village. The path winds along the canal, where frogs begin their dusk chorus and dragonflies flicker like living shards of emerald and blue. The air carries the metallic tang of river water, cooling now as the day tilts toward night. Children run ahead, laughing with the careless energy that only youth can conjure after such heat. Women balance jars of water on their heads with the practiced grace of dancers, their shadows long and slender across the dusty path. The overseer, who all day has been the silent sentinel of Pharaoh's will, now walks without urgency, his whip coiled and forgotten at his side. The village emerges from the haze like a mirage of mud brick and smoke. Thin columns of blue-gray rise from cooking fires. The smell of onions and lentils greets you like a familiar song. A neighbor waves from her doorway, a child on her hip, and you lift a weary hand in return. The simple gestures of greeting carry a weight of their own, proof that even in a land ruled by gods and kings, community begins with these quiet acknowledgments. Inside your home, the air is cooler, touched by the shade of palm fronds. You set down your tools and wash your hands in a small basin of river water, the coolness biting against sun-heated skin. Bread and beer await, the unchanging companions of every meal. The bread is dense, rough with the grit of the millstone. The beer is warm and thick, its sourness the flavor of safety. You chew slowly, letting the weariness seep from your bones as the day's noises settle into evening rhythm. Outside, an elder begins to tell a story to the gathering neighbors, a tale of how the goddess Isis tricked Ra into revealing his secret name, gaining the magic to heal and protect. Children lean forward, eyes bright in the flicker of oil lamps. Parents nod, their faces softened by the firelight. The myth carries more than entertainment. It is a reminder that wisdom and courage can bend even the will of the gods, and that the clever and the faithful may find strength beyond their station. The sky darkens to a deep indigo, and the first stars pierce the veil. Sopdet, the dog star, gleaming like a drop of molten silver, the Milky Way stretching across the heavens like the white road of the goddess Nut. The night wind carries the cool scent of the Nile and the faint rustle of palm leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a jackal calls, its cry both eerie and comforting, as though Anubis himself were keeping watch over the sleeping land. You step outside and let the night wrap around you. The sand, which burned your feet at noon, now feels soft and forgiving, like sifted flour. You breathe in the quiet music of the dark, the whisper of water against mud, the occasional splash of a fish, the low murmur of neighbors' voices fading into the hush. The stars seem closer tonight, bright and patient, as if leaning down to listen. In their unblinking gaze, you feel the pulse of something vast and eternal, the same force that drives the river, that guides the sun across the sky, that remembers every name long after the stones have crumbled. Tomorrow, the sun will summon you again to labor and devotion, to the endless dialogue between mortal effort and divine order. But for now, standing beneath the patient stars with the smell of bread and smoke in the air, you know the day has given what it could: work, story, and the quiet proof that even in a kingdom ruled by gods, it is human endurance that keeps the world alive. Dawn breaks pale and hesitant, the desert holding its breath before the sun asserts its familiar command. You rise before the stars have fully faded, the mat cool beneath you, and step into the courtyard where the last lamps sputter their dying light. The air tastes faintly of smoke and damp earth, a softness that will not survive the first blaze of Ra's chariot. Women crouch at the grinding stones, shoulders moving with the slow, certain rhythm of bread's beginning. The rasp of stone on grain is the village's heartbeat, ancient and unbroken. The path to the river gleams with dew. Reeds bow under droplets that catch the first pink glimmers of morning. Frogs croak a sleepy chorus. A heron lifts its wings like the opening of a sacred scroll and glides across the silver surface. You fill your jar at the bank, the cool weight settling against your palms with the quiet authority of the Nile. Its smell is the same each morning: silt, papyrus, a hint of distant storms, both gift and warning. You balance the jar on your head and turn back as the first gold light touches the tops of the palms. The village comes alive as the sun clears the horizon. Farmers shoulder their tools, wooden hoes, coils of rope, while children trail behind with baskets of seed. The overseer waits at the path's edge, reed whip coiled like a sleeping serpent. His presence is command enough. No words are needed. You fall into the slow procession toward the fields, each step a thread in the tapestry of survival. The air grows warmer, the cool of night retreating like a timid guest. Work begins with the rising heat. Oxen pull wooden plows through the dark, generous soil left by the flood. Men scatter seed with measured grace. Women bend to weed and water, their backs shining with the first sweat of the day. Children carry jars of river water, their small faces set in the serious concentration of those who already understand necessity. The rhythm of labor builds, the thud of hoe against earth, the hiss of water poured into thirsty furrows, the low calls of oxen. It is a hymn to the gods who guard the flood, a music of dust and devotion. As the sun climbs, the sky hardens to a merciless blue. Your shadow shrinks until it clings only to your feet. Sweat carves slow rivers down your spine, mingling with the fine grit of soil until your skin feels coated in a second, rough layer. You pause only long enough to drink from a clay cup of beer, warm, sour, heavy with grain. It is not pleasure, but protection, the daily covenant with the river's hidden dangers. The overseer's eyes pass over you and move on. His silence is its own command. By midday, the air quivers with heat. The black soil breathes a metallic scent, and the cries of herons carry like thin silver threads across the fields. From the western cliffs comes the steady percussion of chisels on stone, tomb builders carving eternity into the earth. Each strike a promise that death will be met with order. The sound mingles with the work song of the farmers until the two rhythms become one, the living and the dead keeping time together. When the overseer finally raises his hand, signaling the day's first rest, you straighten with a slow, deliberate motion. The fields lie dark and wet beneath the sun's white blaze, and you feel both the ache of your muscles and the quiet pride of labor honestly given. The breeze from the river carries the scent of papyrus and the cool whisper of water. For a moment, the land seems to pause with you, and in that pause, you sense the ancient balance that has always held between sun and river, life and death, mortal effort and the eternal will of the gods. Evening gathers slowly, as though the desert itself needs time to loosen its hold on the day's heat. The sky, which only an hour ago blazed with a hard, metallic blue, begins to fade into layers of copper and rose. A thin breeze wanders in from the river, carrying the damp sweetness of papyrus and the faint mineral tang of silt. The air cools just enough to remind you that night is coming, though the stones beneath your feet still hold the memory of the sun. The fields lie quiet now. Oxen have been led back to their pens, their hooves leaving deep prints in the dark soil. The last workers drift toward the village in small groups, their voices low and tired. Children race ahead, their laughter ringing like tiny bells against the coming dusk. Women balance water jars on their heads with the practiced grace of dancers, their silhouettes long and slender in the sinking light. The overseer, who only hours ago moved among you like a silent sentinel, walks now without urgency, his whip coiled and forgotten. The village welcomes you with the smell of smoke and cooking. Thin threads of blue-gray rise from hearths. The air carries the familiar fragrance of onions and lentils simmering in clay pots. Neighbors call quiet greetings as you pass, small words of recognition that knit the community together more firmly than any decree of Pharaoh. You feel the weariness in your muscles, but it is a weariness that belongs to accomplishment, the honest ache of a day well spent. You wash the dust from your hands in a basin of river water and sit near the hearth where bread bakes in the glow of coals. The bread is coarse and warm, the beer thick and sour, the flavors of survival. Around you, families gather in doorways, their faces lit by flickering oil lamps. Children settle cross-legged as an elder begins the evening story, a tale of Horus, falcon-eyed and fierce, who battled the chaos god set to restore the order of Ma'at. The words flow like the river itself, carrying both warning and hope. Parents nod at familiar phrases, their eyes reflecting the soft light. The children lean forward, captured by the dance of myth and fire. Above, the stars sharpen against the deepening blue. Sopdet, the bright dog star, gleams like a single drop of molten silver. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like the white road of the goddess Nut, mother of the sun. A jackal's distant cry rises from the desert, both eerie and reassuring, as though Anubis himself is keeping watch. The breeze from the Nile cools your skin, and for a moment the day's toil falls away. You breathe the night and feel its patient silence settle around you. When the story ends, the elder's voice lingers in the air like the final note of a song. The lamps burn low, neighbors drift back to their homes. You step outside and stand beneath the stars. The sand, which burned your feet at noon, now feels cool and forgiving. You look toward the river, where moonlight draws a silver path across the dark water. Somewhere beyond the reeds, a fisherman's pole strikes the surface with a hollow, musical sound. You close your eyes and listen. The river's hush, the whisper of palm fronds, the quiet breathing of the desert. In that stillness, you sense the vast, unbroken rhythm that has always guided this land. The eternal dialogue of sun and flood, of labor and rest, of mortal effort and divine design. Tomorrow will come with the same demands. Ra will rise, the fields will call, the overseer will watch. But tonight the gods seem close, the stars patient, the river eternal. You stand at the edge of this ancient order and feel, in your bones and in the quiet of your heart, that you are part of something both fragile and everlasting, the living heartbeat of Egypt itself. Before dawn, the world is neither night nor morning, a hush that belongs to both. The stars are still bright, but the sky over the eastern horizon holds a faint bruise of color, the first quiet promise of Ra's return. You wake to this in-between hour, the mat cool beneath you, the air touched by the last gentle breath of night. The village lies wrapped in shadow, mud brick walls silvered by moonlight, palm fronds whispering in a breeze that smells of river and smoke. It is a fleeting moment of stillness. the kind that makes you believe time itself has paused to listen. You rise and step outside. The sand is soft and cold under your feet. The memory of yesterday's heat gone as if it never existed. A donkey shifts in its tether, the soft jangle of rope breaking the silence. From a distant hut comes the first cough of an elder waking, and somewhere by the river, a fisherman strikes his pole against the side of his boat. A hollow, echoing sound that travels like a slow drumbeat through the dark. The Nile is invisible beyond the palms, yet you feel its presence. A cool, breathing giant whose heart never stops. This morning the path to the river is nearly empty. Only a few early risers walk beside you, women carrying empty jars, a child rubbing sleep from his eyes. Dew pearls the reeds in tiny globes of light, each one holding a fragment of the stars. Frogs croak their final songs before the day silences them. You kneel at the bank and fill your jar, the water cold and heavy against your palms. It smells of silt and life, of everything that has ever passed through this kingdom. You balance the jar on your head and turn back toward the village as the horizon begins to glow. By the time the sun lifts its first rim above the desert, the village has awakened. Smoke rises in thin, gray ribbons. The grinding stones rasp in their eternal rhythm. Men shoulder tools worn smooth by generations. Children trot behind with baskets of seed. The overseer waits at the path's edge, reed whip coiled, but silent. His eyes meet yours for a moment. No threat, no greeting, only the shared knowledge that the day's work must begin. You fall into the quiet procession, each step a continuation of a story older than any single life. In the fields, the soil is dark and fragrant, rich with the Nile's gift. Oxen pull wooden plows through the soft earth. Men scatter seed in slow arcs. Women bend to weed and water, their backs shining in the new light. Children carry jars of river water, their small faces solemn with the seriousness of necessity. The rhythm builds, the thud of hoe, the hiss of poured water, the low calls of oxen. It is the same music you have known since childhood, the same music your ancestors heard and your children will one day hear. A hymn to survival, a prayer without words. As the morning grows, the heat gathers its familiar strength. Shadows shorten, and sweat carves thin rivers down your spine. Yet today, the work feels different. Perhaps it is the memory of last night's stories, of Horus and Isis, of the eternal struggle between order and chaos. Perhaps it is the quiet certainty that the river will flood again, that the sun will rise again, that life will continue long after any single name is forgotten. The fields seem less like a burden and more like a covenant. You give your labor, and the gods give the world its balance. When the overseer finally signals the midday rest, you straighten and gaze toward the river. Its wide surface glints like hammered bronze beneath the merciless sky. A heron rises from the reeds, its wings slow and deliberate, a living hieroglyph against the white blaze. You drink a mouthful of warm, sour beer and feel it steady your breath. Around you, the others sit in the narrow shade of palms, their faces calm, their voices low. For a heartbeat, the land itself seems to pause, holding the quiet promise that the order of Ma'at endures. You know the pattern will not change. Tomorrow you will rise before the stars fade, walk to the river, and join the endless labor that keeps the kingdom alive. The pharaoh will remain a distant presence carved in stone. The gods will continue their patient watch from sky and river. Yet within this repetition lies something greater than mere survival. It is the proof that your days, though small, are part of an eternal design, a balance of sun and flood, of toil and rest, of mortal effort and divine purpose. As the sun begins its slow descent, you feel the weariness in your limbs transform into quiet pride. You have given the day your strength, and the day has given you belonging. The river glimmers like a path of light toward the horizon. The sky deepens to gold. You shoulder your tools and turn toward home, carrying with you the simple, unshakable truth that the heart of Egypt beats not only in its pharaohs or its temples, but in every humble life that answers the dawn and works until the stars return.